So now that there's not going to be any UEFA revenue coming in, this probably means for Manchester City that a lot of these players are going to have to either take a pay cut or they're going to have to go somewhere else. All right, what's happening, everyone? Welcome to yet another episode of VMFC. My name is Alex Pérez. Thank you all for joining me one more week. We have a very special show for you all this week. One day earlier than usual, of course, if you guys are aware. This show comes out every single Wednesday. But this week, because we have Champions League, it's coming out on Tuesday morning. So that's how it's going to be for these Champions League games. I feel like it's the only way to really get the most out of this entire week. So that way, the stuff that I'm saying is as current as possible. Excellent show. We're going to talk about the Champions League, and we're also going to talk about Manchester City's European ban. I'm going to explain it a little bit, put you guys up to date, and give a little bit of my take. But first, before we begin any of that, of course, you guys already know the drill. Follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Veterans Minimum. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Veterans Minimum, or Veterans Minimum Show in your search bar on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Veterans Minimum. Subscribe right now. It is likely that you're watching this on YouTube, so please help us with subscribing on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, and of course you can find it as well on BlueWirePods.com. And of course, patreon.com/Veterans Minimum for $1 a month. That is it, $1 a month will get you merch like what I'm wearing right now. It'll get you early releases of the podcast, exclusive content, contests, and much more. Content and contests. All right, so I didn't want to get you guys confused there. All right, let's get started. So this past Friday, Manchester City was officially banned by the UEFA from any European competitions for these next 2 seasons, not including this one. And they are also fined 30 million euros. 30 million euros. That is a lot of money, of course. I mean, when you talk about millions, it's a lot of money. It's really just a lot of money. But I feel like not a lot of people really understand why Manchester City has been banned from playing Champions League, or worst case scenario, Europa League. To understand why they will not be eligible to play, at least before this appeal, why they're not eligible to play these next few seasons, I feel like we all have to understand what the financial fair play is. The UEFA financial fair play regulations are really just a set of rules for teams in Europe, so they don't spend more money than what they make from their transfers. So let's just say, for example, I don't know, Real Madrid. They make 50 million euros in transfers, and they spend 50 million euros on a player. Well, then that's good. On a player, both the transfer and the wages for the year or for the season. They spend that much money. Then they break even, and it's good in UEFA's eyes. But UEFA does give you a bit of a leeway, a 5 million euro leeway. So let's say, for example, you make 50 million euros, but instead of spending those 50, you spend 55, then it's still okay. What would happen now, let me rephrase this. The only way that you would be on bad terms with UEFA is if you make 50 million euros, for example, and you spend 75, and you can't justify how you got that extra money to pay for this player's transfer and for his wages. And that's what happened to Manchester City. They spent way more than what they officially made. And that's really just a very, very, very basic of what the UEFA financial fair play is. It's just a very, very basic. But enough, I think, to get us on the same page. At least we know what we're talking about. City is not a first-time offender. They were actually They were punished in 2014. They were punished in 2014 by the UEFA for the same thing, but the punishment wasn't a ban or a fine. Their squad for every Champions League game was reduced to 21 players. So instead of 23, it was 21. 21 players, 21 eligible players for game day. Which, in hindsight, it's like, okay, I mean, whatever. But when you're there, you never know if an injury can occur or something like that. So that's what had happened to Manchester City back in 2014. They were punished in a much less severe way than they were this past week. So many of you may be asking yourselves, well, if they were already punished for a similar offense, why did this happen again? Why did this case open again? Well, there was some documents that leaked unofficially, which then of course turned official. These documents leaked and it showed that Manchester City was doing some shady business, just putting it nicely. They were doing very shady business, and UEFA started investigating back in March of last year. So this investigation took about a year from its official beginning to its official end. It took about a year. And UEFA said, all right, this might be way more severe than what we thought. Let's punish them in a much more severe way. And they did. 2-year ban, 2-season ban, 30 million euro fine. This is big. This is huge for soccer, not only in Manchester, not only in England, not only in Europe, but just in soccer around the world. And there's so much that can actually happen from this. But first, let me break it down region by region, if I can say. What does this mean for Manchester City? What does this ban and fine mean for Manchester City? Well, I mean, it means that they're 30 million euros poorer now. Should they pay this fine? They still don't pay it and they still don't serve the ban because they are going to appeal. And that might take a few more months. It has to happen, of course, before next season. But this means, should the ban stand, Manchester City cannot play Champions League because that's what they've been playing. They haven't played Europa League in a long time. But they won't be playing Champions League in the 2020-2021 season and in the 2021-2022 season. They will not be eligible to play any European competition. They can still play this season. They can win it. It's very possible. They can definitely win it. But if they win it, they will not be able to play the UEFA Super Cup in August. So then that means that the runner-up would have to play the Super Cup against the winner of the Europa League. I mean, this is pretty simple stuff. And of course, when you don't play in the Champions League, you don't get the revenue that that teams that play and get very deep into the competition, you don't get the money that those teams do. So let's just say, for example, the winner of this past Champions League, which was Liverpool, there's no official amount that they got, but there's a lot of speculation, a lot of rumor, of course, a lot of unofficial amounts say that they got about a 9-figure check for winning the tournament. You surely get an 8-figure check should you advance to the round of 16. Surely you get an 8-figure check from UEFA. So now Manchester City's not going to have that money coming in, which is huge because if you look at the players that they have on their payroll, these guys earn a lot of money, a whole lot of money. And a lot of that money comes from playing UEFA's competitions. Of course, being in the Premier League is pretty nice too because you get a good deal from the broadcast rights and from the sponsors, which are very big sponsors. Of course, they have a massive bank that has been sponsoring this league for many years. But you still want that UEFA revenue. You always do. It doesn't hurt anyone. And that's why. That's what attracts so many players to Manchester City. Because of how good the wages are. How big the wages are that they offer. So now that there's not going to be any UEFA revenue coming in, this probably means for Manchester City that a lot of these players are going to have to either take a pay cut or they're going to have to go somewhere else. And if we're being honest, most of these players are there for the money, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I want to do a job where I get paid, where I get compensated. Who doesn't? But at the same time, Manchester City's not going to have that attraction, that appeal to bring in players. So it's going to hurt their stock. It's going to hurt their brand. Which is huge because they were beginning to establish themselves as a powerhouse in England. They already were. Let me rephrase this. They were trying to establish themselves as a powerhouse in Europe. They were already a powerhouse in England. Now, speaking of England, what does this mean for the Premier League, at least for these next 2 years? If the ban does stand, this means that fifth place, whoever finishes fifth place this season in the Premier League will play Champions League next season. Wasn't the case last season or the season before or ever. Fifth place never goes to the Champions League directly. Sheffield United was in fifth place. They can make it to the Champions League should they finish in fifth place, which is very possible. They can make it to the Champions League next season if this ban against Manchester City stands. What else does this mean for the Premier League? This means that Liverpool's going to have one less threat to the title. Manchester City, as strong as they have been this season, they have still been strong. The amount of points that they have racked up this season on any other season would probably have them in first place. But this season, the 2019-2020 season, it's been Liverpool's for the taking. They haven't lost a game. Hell, they've won every single game but one. Liverpool will have one less threat moving forward. If they have been winning, if they're 5 wins away from winning the Premier League now, I don't even want to imagine what it's going to be like should Manchester City not be a threat for these next couple of years. It's going to be that much more easy for Liverpool to walk through the entire Premier League. And of course, for the Premier League, this could mean that there's going to be significantly less people watching Manchester City games, which plays with their ratings and the attraction and the appeal and all of that stuff. But that's a little bit more of their business. Now, what does this mean for European football as a whole? Well, it's similar to the Premier League. There's one less powerhouse in Europe. There's one less candidate to win the Champions League. Manchester City was one of the favorites, at least betting-wise, to win the Champions League this season. And now if this ban stands, Manchester City won't even be eligible to play, which means that there's going to be an extra spot for another one of these teams to come in and potentially win the Champions League. But more importantly, we just talked about the competitive side, the competition side of all of this. What this means for European football as a whole is that this is a warning. This, to me, is a warning for every other team. I'm talking about PSG. I'm talking about Real Madrid. I'm talking about Barcelona and Juventus. I'm talking about those teams that spend big. And sometimes we see the fees that they pay for these players, and we're like, where the hell do they get all this money? That's going to open up the eyes to a lot of these UEFA officials who, by the way, I'm just going to say it. They're as dirty and as corrupt as the FIFA guys were 5-6 years ago, as they've always been. All these guys are just dirty and corrupt. Just putting it out there. It's simple. If you don't want to see it, you're just naive. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. Except that some people know how to do it right and others are a little bit dumber. They don't know how to get away with it. But still, those teams that I mentioned, and maybe more teams who might not spend as big as PSG and Real Madrid and Barca do, but they still spend more than what they make, they're going to be on the radar. And the smaller teams have less of an opportunity to get away with this because they might not have the brand, the appeal, the exposure that these big teams have. But me personally, now going into my opinion, me personally, I think that there's way more to this. Way more to this than just Manchester City spent a little bit more than what they made, and they breached into the 19th article of the fair play rules. I wipe my ass with those rules, all right? Everyone does. They all do. They all do. There's way more to this. Someone in Manchester City, one of the officials from Manchester City, said something that pissed off an official from UEFA, and they're like, all right, I don't like what they said. Let's punish them. Yeah, that's how we're going to get them back. I feel like that's along the line. Though I'm going more towards that than an actual breaking of the rules that occurred. There's so much more. We don't know about it. We won't know. Stuff is going to come out as time goes on. But as of right now, all we know is that Manchester City has been banned from playing Champions League, Europa League, UEFA Super Cup for the next 2 seasons. And this is massive. This is huge. And it's going to be so interesting to see how this plays out. Because UEFA, I'm looking at you. You could be setting a precedent for all of these other teams. You could be setting an example and showing everyone that if you break UEFA rules, quote unquote, if you break our rules, you have to pay. The Champions League is finally back. Months of anticipation come down to this. The round of 16 begins this week. We have 4 games. I will be highlighting 2. The first one that we will be looking at is Borussia Dortmund against PSG. Let me tell you guys this from the start. I believe that this is the game that's going to steal the show. It's going to steal all the headlines and all the limelight because this game has the makings of being an incredible matchup. You have a team in Borussia Dortmund who will be hosting this week. You have a team that has been exciting throughout the entire season. They're exciting because you don't know what to expect. They score 4 or 5 goals, but they concede 4, 5, 6 goals. Or sometimes they don't concede any. You don't know what to expect. They're so much fun to watch. They're young. They're reckless. They don't care. They concede goals, but then they come right back and they score. They're so much fun to watch. Borussia Dortmund's so much fun to watch. And now, with the addition of Erling Haaland, my goodness, they became even more fun to watch, which was something that we thought was even harder to do. But for whatever reason, they became even more fun to watch. And now you have another team on the other side, PSG. A team like PSG that has met expectations so far. They're in first place of the Ligue 1. You can say whatever you want about their style of play and this and that, whatever. Everyone has their own opinion. That's fine. They won their Champions League group. They have Neymar, they have Mbappe, they have Icardi, they have Di Maria. And they all look very dangerous on paper, of course. But in these moments, these exact moments, this time of the year is when PSG, like an alarm clock, they crumble. It is set perfectly by them. All right, this is when we're going to play. In the beginning of March is when we're going to play our worst game of the season, and we're going to lose, and we're going to be eliminated from the Champions League. Heartbreak in 2019 against Manchester United. How do you lose to Manchester United at home? That is just incredible. You deserve to not play Champions League should you lose to Manchester United. And then against Real Madrid the season before that in 2018, they lose. And then in 2017, they were up 4-0 against Barcelona, and then they go into Camp Nou and they lose 6-1. You deserve to not play Champions League. You deserve to be eliminated. Is this going to be the story this season? Is it really going to happen again? Is a team like Borussia Dortmund going to outplay, outsmart, outcoach PSG, a team who has been built to win a Champions League, but have failed to do so in every single attempt that they have had? Or is this finally the time where PSG, is this the moment when PSG finally says, you know what, we are sick and tired of failing. We are going to win it all. We are yet to see. The storylines for this game, very interesting because Thomas Tuchel, the manager for PSG, is coming back to coach against his old club, Borussia Dortmund. That's who he was coaching before he went to PSG. Thomas Tuchel doesn't really get much of the credit that he deserves. He's an excellent manager. He took Borussia Dortmund back to relevance. Borussia Dortmund was this close, literally this close to getting relegated a few seasons ago. And they just started doing a little better. And now they're back to playing at a level in which we enjoy watching them again. Because they've always been enjoyable. I mean, it sucks to say, but they're the lovable losers. That's what people call the Chicago Cubs before they won the World Series. And now Borussia Dortmund might be one of the lovable losers in soccer. Another storyline, Neymar. Again, like clockwork, always injured at this time of the year. I wonder why. I wonder why he's always injured. Maybe he's dancing a little bit too hard in his birthday and he's having too much fun at his sister's birthday party, which, by the way, listen, I have a younger brother and I love him to death. He is just an awesome dude. But if I were to have a Champions League game, not even just a Champions League game, if I were to have something important going on, something that I've been working for my entire life, and it was my brother's birthday the same day or around the same time, and he was having like a big party, and he's like, dude, you have to come out. Freaking, I don't know, Drake is going to be playing here. He's going to perform at my party and this and that. I'd be like, dude, thank you so much for the invitation. You know I wouldn't miss it for the world, but I have this coming up. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I have to stay. I'll spend some time with you some other time. Neymar should probably do the same. Of course, I'm not Neymar. It's so easy for me to say it from the outside looking in, but Neymar, dude, they pay you the millions to win games like this one. Play. At least show up and play. Because you can't do anything from the stands just watching. You can't do anything. You have to be there playing. Even if you lose, just lose with that peace of mind knowing that at least you played. So stop going to those damn parties, please, Neymar. I'm not even a PSG fan, but just please stop going. And then the other storyline, Dortmund's defense. Can Dortmund hold off PSG's attack? If they can, it'll make it so much more interesting. It'll make it a very interesting game. If they can't, God save Borussia Dortmund. The keys of this game. PSG and their defense. PSG isn't known to have a world-class defense. They have a world-class attack and a lot of players, but they don't have a world-class defense, or defense, as they like to say it in England. If they can do well against Sancho, Thorgan Hazard, Erling Haaland, and all those guys, then they have a very big chance of advancing because PSG themselves have an attacking prowess, a big attacking prowess, and they know that if they could just turn it up for those two games, they will likely advance to the quarterfinals. Another key is Neymar. If Neymar plays, PSG is a completely different team. We're looking at a team that can very well win the Champions League. We are looking at a team that might even be a favorite to win the Champions League. You can say whatever you want about Neymar. I just tore him a new one a few seconds ago. But Neymar's a game changer. Neymar can elevate you. Neymar can have you being a perennial round of 16 quarterfinal in the Champions League team and elevate you to a Champions League winner. That's the impact that Neymar has. Of course, PSG has Mbappe and Icardi and Di Maria and all these guys. Yeah, but Neymar is just special. And he shows up in these types of games when he's suited up. When he's not, it's hard. Like I said, you can't do anything from the stands. Neymar can push you over the hump. That's what I'm trying to say. Neymar has that capacity. Neymar can do it. Another key for this game is Sancho and Haaland. If they can link up, if they can play like they have been playing in the Bundesliga for these last few weeks, PSG is going to have a lot of problems defending them. You can't give these guys any space because they got along so well and so quickly that it's kind of scary, actually, how good they play together when they've only been playing together for a month, and they play this well with such little time being together. It's kind of scary, but that's what happens when you have two very special talents. Haaland, at some point, you know that you can't contain him. You can contain him for a few minutes, but after a while, he's going to say, all right, let me score my goal, and then we can go back to normal. And he's going to score because that's what he does. And Sancho's such an incredible player. Whoever takes Jadon Sancho to their team next season is going to be incredibly lucky because he is so good. He is such a good player. But that's the key for Borussia Dortmund. Erling Haaland, Jadon Sancho. How will they link up? How will they play? How will they find spaces? How will they make spaces? It's up to them. It's up to them. My prediction here for the first leg. These are predictions for the first leg. I think that we're probably going to see a 2-1 or 3-2 win for PSG. I know that they're away from home. I know that Neymar is still 50-50. But I think that PSG does have enough to edge out Dortmund. Dortmund's not going to be an easy game, an easy opponent. Dortmund's not going to be an easy out for absolutely anyone. Ask Barcelona. But I wholeheartedly believe that PSG has what it takes to advance to the quarterfinals. And they will take a big step towards the quarterfinals on Tuesday when they win by 1 goal. But they will take that advantage back home to Paris to defend it in 3 weeks. And it's going to be a very, very entertaining game. And I am here to watch it. I can't wait. All right, the second and final game that I will be going through today will go down on Wednesday. That is Tottenham Hotspur hosting RB Leipzig. We've talked a lot about RB Leipzig throughout these last few weeks. They are one of VMFC's favorites to watch. As often as I get a chance to watch them play, I am there in front of the TV. They are just so much fun to watch. So it's going to be fun to watch them this week. But Tottenham is still a massive question mark. And even though I just watched them this morning, I'm recording on Sunday night. Even though I watched them this morning win off of a mistake from Aston Villa's defense, but they still won. They were there and they were attacking. They were looking for the opportunities. They were going to win regardless. That's just my way of seeing it. They're still just a big question mark. We don't know who they are still. We still don't know if they want to park the bus or if they want to attack. Mourinho might not have the players that he's looking for. He might have got some help in the January transfer window, which I think that overall, I'll say it again, the January transfer window was successful for Tottenham Hotspur, but not to the point where they will be elevated to maybe playing a Champions League final again. But again, it's really not Jose Mourinho's fault that he arrived in November. He took the job. It is what it is. He knew what he was getting himself into. RB Leipzig, we do know a little bit more about. We know the style or the styles that they have, but we know that they can turn it up. We know that they defend well. They're dangerous on the counter. Excuse me. We know what they are. Tottenham Hotspur, we're trying to figure out. Tottenham does have one big advantage, though. And I just mentioned it a few seconds ago. Tottenham Hotspur has the advantage of experience. They have been here, they have done that. And not too long ago, they did this last year. They went all the way to the Champions League final last year. They didn't win it, and they looked terrible in the actual final, but they were there. And they beat teams that were likely to be in the final. They didn't just beat any scrubs. They beat teams that were favorites. So they've been there and they've done that. Not only have the players been there, done that, but the coach has been there and done that. RB Leipzig, they have never even been to a direct elimination game in the Champions League. So there we are looking at a big disadvantage between Tottenham and RB Leipzig. Storylines for this game. Jose Mourinho's ability to manage these types of games. For him, if he can scrape out a 1-0 win at home, he'll be happy. He will be thrilled. And by thrilled, I mean, oh, yeah, well, I think we got a very good result, and I think we will go back in 3 weeks, and I think we will win, and I think we are a very good team. That is Jose Mourinho being happy, and a very terrible impression of Jose Mourinho, sir. I have failed you. I am so sorry. Jose Mourinho knows how to manage these games. Jose Mourinho is very good at putting these games in perspective for his players and telling them, this is what we have to do. We cannot get out of our game plan. We have to stick to our game plan, and this is how we will win. He knows how to convince his players. Another storyline that I'm looking out for is RB Leipzig's youth. They have a very youthful team, but it is really... It really depends how you look at it, because youthful teams, young teams tend to either play with no pressure, play free, play loose, or they tend to play with a lot of anxiety. They tend to play with a lot of nerves and a lot of uncertainty because they've never done that. They've never had that experience. Of course, you have to experience it at some point. You have to gain this experience at some point. And I think this might be it for RB Leipzig. This is where they gain the experience of playing such an important game, which is a Champions League round, well, 2 games. Champions League round of 16. The keys for this game, I think that Mourinho is going to be one of the big keys for Tottenham. It all depends on the game plan. How is this team going to play? How is Tottenham going to control the midfield? How will they defend against RB Leipzig's incredible attack? And how will they attack RB Leipzig's very solid defense? It's all up to Jose Mourinho. What does he have dialed up? This is where you show your better game plans. This is where you show your experience. Another key is the opposing manager, Julian Nagelsmann. You guys know my love for him. What type of game will he try to plan? What type of game will his team try to play? That is what I tried to say. I can't speak. We all know that he has an extraordinary ability to be flexible with his tactics. He can play with a backline of 5, a backline of 3, a backline of 4. He can play with 2 strikers. He can play with 1. It doesn't matter. He is flexible. He knows that that one game plan, sticking to one game plan, isn't necessarily the best case for these types of games. One style, you can have an overall idea of what your style is, but you can modify it. It doesn't have to be set in stone, one type of style. This is how we do it, and that's it. Very few teams in sports have been able to get away with that type of stuff. And Julian Nagelsmann knows that if he were to marry one style of football, then he's asked out. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this incredible soccer mind will work in this scenario, in this situation that is a Champions League direct elimination game. This is just a fascinating game in all aspects. In every single aspect. Defensively, attacking, counterattacking, the managers, the storylines, everything. It's so interesting. I really see either team advancing. It sounds like a cop-out answer, I know. Either team can get the job done. But for this first leg, I think it's going to be a low-scoring draw. It could even be a scoreless draw. But to make it a little bit more clear, I think that this game is going to end 1-1 in London. It's going to end 1-1. Lucas is probably going to score a goal, and Timo Werner is going to score another one because he's just that freaking good. And after, of course, they play that game on Wednesday, and they tie, according to my prediction, it'll be decided in Leipzig in 3 weeks. All right, guys. I made two predictions. For this game. Now I got to make two more. The games that I didn't mention, and that is Atletico, Madrid, Liverpool, and Atalanta against Valencia. I think that Liverpool absolutely obliterates Atletico Madrid. By obliterates, I mean that they just dominate. I can see this game being 3-1. Liverpool just completely, utterly dominating a lifeless Atletico Madrid who's won one game out of 7, out of their last 7. I think this is probably the time where Atletico Madrid fans have their eyes open to reality and they say, wow, we just got completely exposed on a world stage and our coach had no response. Liverpool wins against Atletico Madrid. And the other one, Atalanta and Valencia. I'll be honest, I haven't followed either team this season, but I do have to say that I feel like it's gonna be such a good game. It's one of those games that we're like, who against who? I don't think I'm gonna watch, but you probably should. And I feel like Atalanta's gonna edge out Valencia by about a goal. So the only draw that I see in these first few games is between Tottenham and RB Leipzig. My picks are going to be on the Instagram at Veterans Minimum. I'm going to post that graphic, or that graphic's going to be posted. And you guys can take a look at my picks and keep score for me, because I'm probably going to go 0 for 4. That's what happens when I start picking stuff. But the Champions League is finally back. I'm so happy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and that will do it for VMFC episode number 7. This episode, again, a day earlier than the usual because of the Champions League. So next week, expect exactly the same. Next Tuesday morning, you will see VMFC episode number 8, previewing 2 more games from next week, from that week. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at AlexPerezFC. Last week I said at Alex Perez. That's taken, obviously. It's at Alex Perez FC on Twitter and on Instagram. Again, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Veterans Minimum. And enjoy the games. Enjoy the games because the Champions League is finally back. After so long, it's finally back. Thank goodness the Champions League is finally back. Just like us, we will be back next week to talk even more Champions League. Take care of your... What? Take care, everyone. Thank you, and goodbye.